Hi, I'm Linda Lambert, and today I'm talking with Marie Eaton, who has three poems published in Spring and All, the 2023 anthology, written and edited by Red Wheelbarrow Writers and published by Sidekick Press. This is what the book looks like. And
Lovely cover. It's
it
really
is a
lovely.
lovely cover. I think everyone is very pleased with this, and I think this is the best of the four anthologies that Red Wheelbarrow has published. And I would really like to start out with Marie reading Ordinary Things. It's one of my favorite of her three poems in this anthology.
Thank you, Linda. Ordinary things. I am in love with ordinary things. The wooden spoon stirring my soup, the green teapot on the counter, my hoary blade, the brown chair at the window, the rosy towel waiting on the bathroom rack. I love their utility and the way they always step up to do the job at hand. I love how the cup holds the tea or the fork the bite of salmon. Like old lovers, we each know how to do our part.
I just think this is such a compelling poem, maybe because of its ordinariness and the way it has collected simple images that we can all understand. And I'm just wondering how you came to write it.
Maybe I'll start by talking a little bit about my writing practice. So at the beginning of COVID, a good friend of mine, who is a poet in Oregon, Kate Gray, called a group of friends and said, you know, lockdown's going to be hard, and let's gather each day and do some writing together. And I have been a lyricist most of my life. I write songs, but poetry was uh, an occasional diversion from lyric writing. But in these morning sessions, we meet 6 days a week. In these morning sessions, it turned out to be poems that showed up. And we offer each other a prompt in those writing sessions. And one day the prompt was ordinary things.
Hmm.
And that got this poem started. So with that heading at the top of the page and the 20 minutes of silent writing ahead of me, I just wandered through my mind about through the ordinary things in my home that I actually enjoy using. And these are the ones that came to mind.
Were there some, as you walked around your house, were there some items that tempted you to be included that you had to say, no, 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 not you?
No, actually not. I was more focused on finding five or so that worked right. Yeah.
After you did your 20-minute writing, how much of how much revision did you do?
This one, a little bit. Most of the poems that I have been writing are quite short poems because they show up fairly completely in that 20 minutes. So most of the revision is trying to find a place where there might be some assonance or alliteration that I could include but hadn't thought of in the initial draft, or finding a different way to lay it out on the page or to punctuate it. Um, but most of the poems are fairly complete by the time the 20 minutes is up.
I think many writers and poets would find that enviable.
Well, that's because it's so short. Um, I have not yet dabbled too much in more formal forms, such as the sonnet or the villanelle or the pantoum, and I think those would take a good deal more work and thought.
Marie, did you hear the voice say record?
Yes, I did. It is
Okay.
recording. I can see the little red button.
Okay. I just got nervous for a moment, so thank you for your calmness.
Yes.
In any
So
case,
So I just think as I continue this adventure in writing poetry, I think as I tackle some of the more formal forms, I'm sure it will take way more than 20 minutes to finally get to the uh, to a polished piece, a piece I'm happy enough with. But each of them took some polishing after the 20 minutes.
Well, you're using words like assonance and alliteration that are common to writers of all kinds, but especially to poets. So I'm wondering, I know you majored in English, and I'm wondering if you had glints of doing poetry in those early years.
So, being a lyricist is actually a lot like being a poet. We think a lyricist thinks about many of the same things in writing the lyrics for a song. So the use of metaphor, so you're telling it slant rather than telling something straight on. The in Metaphor and imagery and assonance and alliteration, obviously with lyrics, a good deal of rhyme as well. And so those tools were already in my toolbox
Hmm.
from years and years and years of songwriting. The difference for me is that in writing songs, the words need to be tied to the meter of the music. And so there's less freedom of motion than I am finding in writing this more free verse um, kind of poetry.
Will you say a little bit about the musical group that you were involved in that you are known for around Whatcom County and beyond?
So I've always been a singer and loved singing. I actually earned some of the money for my graduate degree by being in a country western band in Seattle during my graduate school years. But in 1980, I met three other women, and we formed a group called Motherlode, and we are still singing together after all these years. So 43 years now of singing with each other. And we primarily host music camps for women with
Hmm.
the idea that finding and creating a safe space for women to explore music together. Um, and that camp got started during the time when there were lots and lots of women's music festivals, which are wonderful. But
Hmm.
what we noticed was there were 5 people on the stage and 2,000 people in the audience. And we wanted those 2,000 people to be also playing music. And
Oh,
so we started these camps where people can come and take classes and um, explore being in a musical environment together. Um,
this is quite a different environment than the one you have worked in for how many years? Since 1976, I think.
so I was a faculty member at Western Washington University for all those years and um, played a lot of roles there. I was fortunate enough to be dean of Fairhaven College, which I loved. It's a very lively and engaging place for students and faculty to learn together. And while I was there, I got to teach a class on songwriting so to spend 10 weeks with students exploring the craft of songwriting was a wonderful experience for me. You always learn more about your craft as you try to teach about your craft. So,
Yes, that is always true. But still, when you're a professor, you have to produce some peer-reviewed and other papers. So I'm wondering, did any kind of lightness uh, enter into those creations?
it kind of depended on the audience I was writing for, but I did do quite a number of pieces on exploring the role of the arts in learning. And in those pieces, I think I really could address some of that creative spirit. The Western invites you to do, for a while, I'm not sure they're still doing this program, but had a last lecture program
Hmm.
where faculty, as they were nearing their retirement, were invited to give a last lecture. And
Ooh.
that for me was very fun because I did a lot of singing as part of the last lecture. Trying to pick songs that I thought addressed some of the issues that had come up over the arc of my teaching career.
Is that recorded somewhere so that individuals like
I
myself
oh,
could listen to that?
I don't know if it is.
Maybe I'll have to contact someone up at the library and say, do you have this? And if not, could you please get it?
Mhm.
I think it would be, I think it would be great to hear. Um, is there anything, well, I'm curious as to why you answered the call, how you found the call from Red Wheelbarrow Writers to contribute these poems of yours.
So I had visited Red Wheelbarrow Writers earlier, prior to the pandemic. It was actually when I was working on teaching memoir writing at the
Hmm.
college, and so I dropped in on a number of the sharing sessions, and just really enjoyed that kind of collaboration and that kind of sharing. And then the pandemic hit, and I kind of lost track of it, but I was still on the email
Yes.
list. And so when the call came from Laura, I thought, okay, I haven't. If you write every single day or 6 days a week for 3.5 years, you have quite a number of poems. And I thought, I think some of these are good enough, and I think some of them actually meet the spirit of the theme of uplift that this book was invited.
Yes, they absolutely. I was not on the editorial, excuse me, the editorial committee this year, but this is the first year it's been juried, so not everything was accepted. And Red Wheelbarrow is meeting again in person. We met yesterday with a good crowd of people, so
Oh, good.
perhaps you can come and read your things,
Yes.
one of your poems or two. Um, I read all three of your poems before we started talking. I'd read them before, of course, but I really enjoyed reading them out loud because
Hmm.
I think they have a clear, sonorous sound. And I wonder if your work as a lyricist has also, if that auditory part factors in when you're putting them together.
I
Excuse me.
think so. One of the pieces of advice I would give songwriting students is that the words have to sit on the music so it's as though you're speaking. That
Oh,
so they don't get so the the flow of the language doesn't get distorted by the music. And I think although these poems don't have music under them, I'm still reaching for that kind of
hmm.
language that is accessible and uh, um, that feels poetic but not stilted.
That seems, I would love to associate you with Mary Oliver because I think that is someone who achieves those goals.
Well, thank you. That's a high compliment. She's
I know, but
a
I
wonderful
quite
poet.
enjoyed your your work. And I wonder if you could read Skyward as we finish out this interview, because Skyward really does seem to me to um, magnify the theme of uplift for this anthology.
Yeah. Linda, I'm going to need to go get it.
That's fine. I will talk a little more about you while you're going to get it. Or if you would like me to read
Oh,
it, I could.
it's right here. I just needed to find it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Skyward. This early morning sky is tender blue, wrapped in a soft fog blanket tossed over islands' shoulders at the edge of the horizon. Fingers of frost paint crystal patterns on window glass and over the grass. And as I watch, sunlight gilds the top branches of the fir tree, her arms raised in praise for the morning, every needle and cone singing Alleluia. I want to live in praise, where every moment is a search for joy, sending my heart skyward like the lark to sing about the miracle of just this moment.
This poem suggests what William Carlos Williams, the conclusion he came to at the end of his poem. Do you remember what that was in Spring and All?
Well, it's the skyward, it's the upward motion, that
Yes.
that sense of lifting.
of uplifting and the awakening of the earth around him. And so that seemed to me to perfectly model that poem. So I'm very glad you thought, oh, I have some poems that would factor in, and
Mhm.
that you submitted them. And I'm also especially glad that I got to talk to you today. And I am going to look forward to playing some more of your CDs, which I have, and reading more of your poetry. And one more thing I thought of was, do you want to say a little bit about what you're working on now and the book that you published?
So in 2022, I actually published 3 volumes of poems. Um, I self-published. One of them was a chapbook contest, but the other 2 I self-published. One of them is a collection of poems that I wrote to negotiate the grief in the loss of my brother. My brother died in 2021, September 2021, and the arc of that book, it's called "What Falls Away Is Always," and the arc of that book is that from the moment of his fall until about 6 months after his death, sort of negotiating that arc. The second volume is a volume of poems that are from the morning writing. It's called Following the Line, because you follow the prompt you're given. And so each poem, it has references the prompt and the poem it came from. And then it's not exactly like an after poem because I don't know the poem before I start writing, but it
Mm.
is certainly, there's a nod to that poet because of the fact that I was given a prompt that is from a poem they wrote. And the project I'm working on right now is a book of poems about growing older. So a lot of the things that have shown up in these morning writings are my own reflections on being nearly 77 years old, and what does that mean um, in in the ways both the body changes and the emotional terrain of what it means to grow older. So that I've just sent off to the publisher, and I hope it will be out this summer.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. That is a great note to end on, and I thank you very much for this time that we're able to spend. And I hope that many people read your poetry, and I think they will.
Okay, thank you, Linda. It was lovely talking to you.